Ok, tutto pronto. Puoi cominciare, Marco. Buona lezione.
Grazie, grazie.
So guys, good morning. Good morning again. Good morning again. This morning we have Dr. Marco Carbonelli from the Italian Prime Ministry Office. Marco, I have the pleasure to say that has been the first lecturer of the first edition of the Master. So when we talk about senior lecturer, Marco fits into the definition. And during over this year, he also graduated in the second level master course in the 8th or 9th edition. I cannot remember now, something like that, 2018, 2019. Yeah. And then he graduated with us in the PhD of Industrial Engineering with a thesis on risk analysis. He will do today a very interesting lecture on CBRN risk. So take the chance not only to listen to the lecture, but to engage a question time with Marco. He will stay with you all the morning. This afternoon, we will move at the Faculty of Engineering. So in about 1 hour, we will send you all the information, but you have to take the car or the bus and come at the Faculty of Engineering. Just a pleasure that I ask to everybody. As I told you, there are a lot of methods to compensate the hour of absence in the class. So please, write here the real presence in the class. If you arrive later or you leave earlier, write the time in which you arrive or write the time when you leave. We cannot find a register that states that you are in class and you are outside. Okay? Then we will compensate. Do not worry for that, but report here the reality, because if you write here that you are in the class, you go outside, you have a car accident and you broke a leg, for instance, it's an assurance problem for the tutor, for the lecturer that is making lecture, for you and for the director of the course. So it's very huge bureaucratic problem. So just tell the truth, and then if you miss some hour to get the minimum, we will find a way to compensate it. Okay, we have a lot of methods to do it. Do not worry. Just be real on the present paper. Thank you so much. Enjoy the lecture. Marco, see you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Andrea. Good morning, everybody. My name is Marco Carbonelli. Pleasure to be here. On behalf of presidents of the Council of Ministers today, I hope the voice will be sufficiently loud to arrive at the last line. Okay, you can hear me? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. We have 4 hours this morning, and we will face some different issues that are for the introduction of some terms and words that will be used during all the master during the year. So this is a very, very fundamental and basic lesson on the fundamental concept related to the risk and even definition of terrorism, violence in general, and the application that we have, different application that we have for the CBRN field, risk and threats. I divide the presentation in 4 different group of slides that you will have at the end of the lesson. And in the first, we will face the basic concept of political violence, and we introduce the concept of weapon of mass destruction, the WMD definition, and the CBRNE. And we focus on the concept of terrorism and on the 3 of political violence. We will see in a few moments what I mean. After that, in the second part, we introduce the fundamental concept of risk in the CBRN issue, the vocabulary, the definition, and we specify the meaning of all the terms that we use during all the year, I would say. After that, we will have a very interesting, I think, statistical presentation on terroristic attacks during the last 20 years in the world, before in the world, after in a very specific country of the world. And the last group of slides, we represent the general organization and this, the framework in which the CBRN defense or the civil defense, I will introduce in this concept even, is structured, and we speak about first responders and advisor. I know that you are together first responder, the first level and the second level today in the same lesson. So this last part is devoted to understand the typical activity that you will cover during the master in this year with the different aspect for the first responders, obviously, versus the advisors. Okay. In this first block, I will leave many reference for the bibliography and the possible going in depth for the future application, for the thesis, for exams. So we'll find many different articles, papers, or something that is related with the issue that I treated in the morning. Okay. Other things, last things, I will have possibility, not only my voice during this for hours, but it is good if you have a question, you have a doubt, anything that you leave your hands, and it's possible to have an exchange of information. The question is very simple and is described by this patch that represent well the situation. I see many people today, and senior even in the classroom. So I imagine that there is an experience and a capability and a skills in the room, other than my experience. Okay. We leave this and we go to the first. Okay. We'll speak about a basic concept on political violence, terrorism, and other definitions on this area. And after that, we will speak about statistics on terrorism attacks. So I propose you to see for a few seconds some visuals, some images that represent a typical situation that is typical for the CBRN incident or accident. Without few words, but at the end of the 4 hours, we will receive this visual and we discuss the meaning after the presentation of the concept that we discussed together today. This is an attack. Typically, there is this situation after a few minutes. People reaction, organization, central organization, local organization to manage the emergency and the crisis. Panic, fear, people suffering. These are typical sequences of situation for CBRN events. Many words can be used and are reported here to describe this situation. And the first issue that we will face together this morning, and to understand the meaning in this field of these words. It's not an easy task because in many cases you have a similar word that means different times and different meanings. What do these words really mean and what could be your role in a CBRN emergency? The target of this lesson is to understand, to have a response for these two fundamental questions. Okay. First of all, I will propose you to work in pairs, a couple, and to attempt to produce a definition in a few minutes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, no more, the definitions of political violence in your understanding. So, for example, you have a two, okay? You create a group and in 2 minutes you write on a piece of paper, you align to attempt to describe the meaning of political violence for you now. After we will understand what in the literature and in the institutional definition, we define political violence. Okay, please, in a couple, choose your okay, the couple, okay? Okay, hey, couple. Couple. If it's not possible, couple, three. Okay, good, good. Okay, we have 2 minutes, please, silence and we work, okay? Another minute. So good to finish. Okay, have you finished? Someone is volunteer to explain, to read the few lines that have been written. I ask you your name, please. Your name is
Elisabetta.
Elisabetta, please.
Intentional violent acts carried out because of political reasons on opponents, meaning anyone with a divergent political orientation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Another volunteer on the last line. Yeah, there, please.
Yeah.
Your name?
Carbonelli.
Please. Okay, okay. Together. One or two.
Political violence is when people use physical force or threats to get what they want from a government or to change how a society works.
Okay. Last one in the middle. Who- Please, your name? That's Gaia, not Gaia, thank you.
Aggression, violence, political avoidance against civilians in order to achieve political aims or maintain political powers.
Okay, interesting. Three different definitions, but similar in some way. Now we will see. Good morning.
Ciao.
Good morning. In the definition, the important thing is to specify these five elements, okay, in order to be complete in the understanding of the meaning. Can we restart? Yeah. So the first question is who, why, how, against, and target, final target of the action, the violence. I propose this definition that has been discussed in many different situations, even at international level. Political violence during this lesson, but even in the understanding of the master, will be defined as these 5-6 lines that now I ask to read. It's possible for you to read, will be defined as the second, third line. Okay, so we face all the 5 elements that I discussed before. The 3 definitions that we have done is quite good. In some aspects are not complete, but are good in order to understand this concept. That is a very general concept that is strictly related even with the CBRN threats. We'll see now a tree definition with the different terms that has been used in the past and in the present. Unfortunately, we have a very specific, terrible international situation in this moment. It's clear to anyone in this classroom. If I speak of political violence, I can divide the area of application of the concept in 4 different relevant aspects. The first one is single or groups against civilians. We are speaking of groups non-state, okay? The second situation is single or groups against the state, not the civilians, so the government. The third branch of these 3 is state against civilians. And even this, the case in the present international situation is a case of application. The last one is state against another state. With a war can be, but can be even not a war. We will see the different situation that are present in the 4 different branch of this tree. Now we will analyze one by one the situation. The first one is single or groups non-state against civilians. And typically we speak in that case of ethnical conflict, religious conflict, and even racial conflict. but are of the same category of single or group against civilians. In the case of single of groups against the state, we have the most relevant application and the relevant events in CBRN item issue are concentrated in these cases, a single group against the state. We will see in the third part of the lesson the numbers of these attacks and events, general attacks and even CBRN attacks. We speak about terrorism, rebellion, revolution, guerrilla, civil war, golpe, and strategy of tension. All these terms have been discussed in the bibliography that I showed you before in depth. So if you want, you can understand, but I will leave some definition now during the first hours. But these are the typical situation that you face when you speak about political violence, or in the case of single groups against a state. Another very, very important concept that is related with all these specific definition is the definition of subversion. Okay, in Italian we say eversione for the Italian people that are here. Subversion. Very, very general concept, but very, very interesting in this field. For the application of terrorism in general, in general for the use of CBRN weapons. The definition of subversion from the vocabulary, for example, the Cambridge English Dictionary, is the act of trying to destroy or damage an established system or government. And another definition, the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, the state of being subverted, a systematic attempt to overthrow or undermine a government or political system by persons working secretly, very, very important this aspect, from within. In our country, in Italy, we have many, many different, in the history of our country, recent history, situation of this kind of application of the concept of subversion. In the last century, in many cases, after the Second World War, we have the terrorism period, an internal terrorism, we call anni di piombo for the 70 and the 80. And we have different situation. We had even golpe in the 70, in the 60, attempt of golpe. So in our country, these concepts are being lived by people. Another definition, we speak now about NATO definition of subversion, action designed to weaken the military, economic, or political strength of a nation by undermining the moral, loyalty, or reliability of its citizens. Very interesting, even this. And the second one is a definition proposed by the USA Department of Defense, DoD. Subversion is defined as actions designed to undermine the military, economic, psychological, or political strength or morale of a governing authority. So when we speak about terrorism, we speak of a specific type of subversion. It's not the only possible subversion, but is one of the more applied. The form of subversion are so this one. Terrorism is the first kind of subversion. Revolution is second kind, different from terrorism. Guerrilla is another time. After that, we have the golpe. and the strategy of tension. In our country, we had even this kind of application during the last 20 years, starting from the half of the 1960, I speak about, after we have many events, terroristic events on civilians. Okay. And finally, another possible situation of subversion is with a civil war, civilian against civilians in the same state, with different political opinion, ethical opinion, in a war. Okay, now we focus the attention on the terrorism concept that is the most relevant for our course. But even the other cases are of interest. And if you want, you will find many papers that speak this in the bibliography. So with terrorism, what we mean? Is it possible for you, please, read the sentence with terrorism, please?
With violence and illegal acts, political, religious, rational, implemented by people operating a clandestine lifestyle.
Okay, this is a first possible definition, very simple. After in the discussion, we will see many other definitions of terrorism, different from this one, because it's not existing up to now a single applied for all the institution definition of terrorism. There are many different opinions regarding this aspect. And you will see at the end of the lesson why is so. Second, may I ask you to read with the revolution.
With revolution, we indicate the usually violent attempt by many people to end the rule of one government and start a new one.
Okay. Please.
With guerrilla, we intend violent acts against military units and structures implemented by people organized in paramilitary structures.
So another specific organization different from the previous one. And it is typical of the military controlled states that the guerrilla is present. Even in the place that are working for peacekeeping operations or in general for peace enforcing operation. We have a situation in which the local people is organizing a guerrilla against these forces that are typical forces of other countries that go there in order to provide peace, attempt to provide peace in some cases. Okay. This other one, may I ask you to read for the coup d'etat or the golpe, please? It's very typical, the situation for the South American countries, but even in our countries, we had two tentatives of golpe in the 70s. So we speak simple of 50 years ago, 60 years ago. In Spain, we had a golpe. In Greece, we had a golpe. In Europe, I mean, okay? So it's no uncommon, it's not difficult to find in the recent history some application of this situation. Specific cases are typically military organizations that attempt to overthrow the government and to take the power. Yeah. So in general, we can say that a golpe is illegal because you have a constitutional rules. On the other side, the Costituzione, we say in Italian, constitutional rules, but someone against these rules go to the power and arrive to the power, and this is not legal ever. In a specific way, there are violent acts to reach the power. Typical are small groups for example, military, I said before, but even intelligence, secret service organized group. Typically are internal organization of the state that are against the government of that state. In some cases, there are external state that financially organize this this smaller group in order to reach the goal. Finally, may I ask please to read the please. Okay, go on.
It is
Government now encourage extremist groups to perform attacks, bombing, and murders.
This is another possibility in order to create tension in the population, the citizen, and to arrive to new law, new acts for the government, for example, related to security and the application of the control of the country. So the strategy of tension is another very subtle possibility that we have for diversion. Okay. And finally, please, may I ask you at the fourth row? Yeah. This is very, very easy application that unfortunately is applied in many, many situations in the world. In general, we can say that violence is typically contrasted by police force. The violence and the police are the typical tools that the state use in order to reduce the violence. Police force. When we speak of terrorism, we have to introduce the force of intelligence, the secret services, because the prevention is the first of all tools that has been applied in order to manage the terrorism evolution. But after the application, even the policies interview, obviously, if there is an event, a terrorist event on the field. When we speak about guerrilla, we speak about military forces. Okay? We will, on this other part of the tree, we face the issue of the state against civilians. Important things in this, unfortunately important in this period, the historical period. For many conflicts that are going on during the last 3 years. We speak about genocide. I can say the Jude genocide referring to the last century, but in some cases I can speak about Palestinian genocide, Gaza genocide. You have read on the newspaper this kind of definition. So I focus my attention on a specific part of the population that is characterized by religion, ethical opinions, traditional culture, heritage, and focus the attention on this part of population attempted to destroy this tradition and this man and woman. After that, I have the torture, that is another instrument that I can use in order to produce fear in the population. We had in Italy, we say bit 1 to instruct 100. Colpire 1 per insegnare a 100. It's okay? After that, we have the state that applied a police, not in general to organize the public order, but to insert fear in the citizen. And in this case, we speak about police brutality. And finally, the strategy of tension of state. So important state that finance and produce organized adestre people in another state in order to create tension, fear, terroristic events, in order to produce in the citizen panic. So the question are related to panic, frightened, pain, and so the government can apply new rule, new acts, new behaviors in order to reach the security of all citizens. This is a very, very general state against state. We have the war, the first case, the last one in the visual. After we have strategy of tension support state against state, guerrilla external support, so organize the internal forces of the country in order to have a paramilitary organization with weapons. For example, in Italy, we have in our history, we speak about partigiani during the Second War. The partigiani had the weapons from another states and organized an internal resistance for freedom of the country. Can I understand this as terrorism? If I speak of partisan, typically in Italy, I speak about people that combated for the freedom of the country. But the act that were conducted was act very similar to terrorist attacks. For this reason, it's very difficult to define the terrorism word, because there is a very thin line on the parts of the freedom fire on one side, and the other side from terrorist attacks or bad people that are against the civilians. It's very important to understand the reasons and the rationale that are behind and at the start of the action, at the beginning of the action. So in this very, very fast dialogue on the definition, we face all these different situations in different aspects. All these definitions are applied during this master in different situations, and it's possible for every one of these to arrive at the use of CBRN weapons and threats. We will see the number after in the third part of the lesson, and we will understand as in some cases the explosive activity as weapons is the most present in the attacks. But we have in some cases even chemical attack, biological attack, and radiological attacks. Okay, last part of the first discussion, and I propose to go on after for 30 past 10 for you is okay to have a break 30 past 10 of 50 minutes, 20 minutes after we have a second part of the lesson. Okay, so I go on. Now I will speak and focus attention only on the word terrorism. Okay, in order to understand the original meaning of the word, when we have been used for the first time in the history, and what is the meaning now for different institutional organization. So the root of terrorism is terror. It's very simple, but the original words that produced this new words that is terrorism is terrere, that is a Latin word, which means frighten and tremble. Okay, terror is substantially an old, very old Latin word that has been used in many Latin text and dialogue of the poets and Latin literature. But we meaning with terrorism referring to causing a frightening and practicing the trembling. So when we speak about fear of citizens, fear of people, panic and anxiety, we speak regarding something that is related with the terror concept and the terrorism definition. For the first of all in history, the term terrorism was used by the journalist during the French Revolution, an English journalist. We were in the 1789, and you know that the French Revolution was a very violent revolution, the population against substantially the king and the aristocratic level of the society. So the reign of terror is the period of the revolution that around the 1793, 1794. In only 1 year has been killed more than 30,000 people in France. Population against clerical people and aristocratic people. And this Sir Edmund Burke, that was an English journalist that was in France in that period, observing what has been happening, commented writing on the French Revolution that there was in the country thousands of those once called terrorists. So this was the first time in a writing piece of paper that we find the word terrorist. And terrorist in that case was the new organization of the state against a part of the previous organization of the state. It's very different respect to the application that we have today of terrorism. Now we'll see this different. So while the reign of terror was a product of the French government, so the new French government wanted to destroy completely the previous organization of the state. So we can say that terrorism was a government action in that case. In the application that we have now, typically we have the state that is defending people by terrorism. And the terrorism is a small group of people, internal or external, if it's international terrorism, that is attempting to produce violence and pains to population in order to reach we say a target, a political target. So this consideration is very relevant regarding the discuss I introduced before. Many governments are apparently adverse to define terrorism because they are worried about how an official definition of terrorism will expose the legitimacy of self-proclaimed combats of national liberation. It's very difficult to divide the national liberation of freedom fighters from terrorists in some cases. So it's very difficult to apply a simple definition. Referring me to the Italian case, for Italians, partigiani are not terrorists. But for German people in that moment, where if the end of the Second World War was with a different final and was not the Italy with the USA and the UK and the Allied was the winner of the war, but was the contrary. We, in this moment, we speak of partigiani, terrorist partigiani. So it's very, very complex, this definition. And for this reason, I want to show you different definition that we have in the international organization, but even in the single different important country. We speak about more than 200 definitions of terrorism, different definitions. So the important thing for our master is to reach the goal to represent the most important elements of the definition that have been taken into account in order to produce the more general definition that is possible to apply. Okay. I start from Schmidt and Youngman, and these two researchers are of the Netherlands, we speak in the last century, with very, very relevant studies, proposed an approach to characterize the terrorism in the 1988. And they speak in terms of percentage of use of the words. Take the different definitions, we study the recurrence of the words in the definition and the meaning of the words in the definition. And in this first study on this issue, we find that the words violence was present in the definition in more than 80% of the cases. The second word, political goals, political targets, in more than 65% of the definition is present this concept. Causing fear and terror, in the roughly half of the definition, you find the word fear or terror. And even the indiscriminate targeting speaks about attacks to civilians in that case, not only to government or relevant people of the establishment. And finally, the underline of the concept of the civilian and the non-combatants. This is another word that is used in the definition. So, put all together this word, we can have three elements that are very, very important in the definition. The use of violence, first of all, terrorism means use of violence. Second aspect, terrorists had political objectives, political target, political goals. And third, the aim of propagating fear in a target population, in a specific part of the population. So we can say that all the definitions of terrorism have to face at least these three aspects. If we speak of terrorism, we speak at least of these three aspects. Now we'll see different definitions, starting from NATO. I ask you to read on, may I ask you on the third row, please, your name is? Okay, may you read the terrorist definition for NATO on the fourth line? Very interesting, this definition, very complex. And in this other slide, we propose the definition given after the September 11 attacks in 2001. by the Department of Homeland Security in the USA, okay? And we speak about two separate categories. We speak about activity that are typical of terrorism behavior, terroristic behavior, okay? The term terrorism means any activity that involves an act that is dangerous to human life or potentially destructive of critical infrastructure. This is a very another important question. Not only people, but even infrastructure, services, and key resources. If I attacked the production of energy in a country, is a terroristic attack with this definition. So starting from this moment of the history, we changed and we opened the definition, not only with the attack to people, but even to the service, to the infrastructure, and to the resource of a nation. After the second comma is a violation of the criminal law of the United States. Obviously, we are speaking of the Department of Homeland Security, or of any state or other subdivision of the United States. And in the B state section appears to be intended to intimidate or coerce the civilian population. So even the attempt, the threat is terrorism. If there is not the action, but there is the threat to have an action, is considered for the USA a terrorism action. So there is, in this sense, the application of the penal code of the USA. This means to influence the policy of the government by intimidation or coercion, and to affect the conduct of the government by mass destruction, assassination, or kidnapping. Well, and please.
Previous slide.
Yeah.
This kind of definition is quite similar to the definition of genocide. In the Convention Against the Crime of Genocide, it is very, very similar. Of 1948.
We speak about this at the end of these slides. Very, very, very interesting. You provoke me to anticipate some concepts. All these definitions are in the same tree. So it's typical that it's difficult in some cases to divide definitively one from the other. Okay? But it's necessary to have to go in depth of the meaning, to attempt to go in depth in order to understand what is the application, the reason, the goal, and after that, what is the rule, the act, and the penal code that is applicable to that case. It's not easy. And even in this period, or recent period, we have a situation in which some person that is working for something is considered, in a case, people that is working for describe objectively a situation, and on the other side is considered to have a propaganda for the terrorism and propaganda for such a nation, such country against this other one. Very, very difficult issue to manage. But I think that is important in the first lesson that we have of this master to have clear that this problem exists. And it's possible in 1 year to go in depth to understand the different application and situation for the law, but even for the behaviors and the react of possible state organization to manage the emergency, to manage the crisis. Because someone of you is a first responders, and we see that will be on the field to reacting in the operation of first activity on the field after the event. Other of us are advisor and are probably seated on a table to understand what happened after, how to manage the short term, the medium term, but even the long term for population. It's not easy. It's probably the most complex situation in which you can find for the government to manage an CBRN attacks or events. It's not catastrophic natural events. I say, okay, an earthquake, you know, we go, we attempt to save a life, we rebuild the house. But if you have such kind of attack in your country, you have very, very relevant effect, panic, reference to institutional reaction, discussion within people, fear, and we will see at the end even other aspects that are relevant. So thank you for your observation. For the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA in the USA, if you ask how do you define terrorism, there is a document that is reported in the bibliography. For the CIA, terrorism means premeditated, politically motivated violence perpetrated against non-combat targets by subnational group or clandestine agents. Another different definition. And speaks about international terrorism, that means involving the territory or the citizen of more than one country. And in general, we speak about terrorist group. That means any group that practice or a significant subgroup that practice terrorism. Okay, this is obvious. In another organization, the United Nations, there was many discussion on the terms terrorism. It is very complex in this organization, because in this organization you have all the different states that are present. So you have USA, you have Italy, but you have even places where the terrorism is an attempt to reach the freedom. So it's very difficult to have a single vision in a holistic form of the definition. In fact, we have not a definition in the United Nations of terrorism, but now we'll see. We have a description of acts. We prefer to describe behaviors instead of give a general position, a definition. So we say at the United Nations in 1999, any action, terrorism act is any action that is intended to cause death or serious bodily harm to civilians or non-combatants, when the purpose of such an act by its nature or context is to intimidate a population or to compel a government or an international organization to do or to abstain from doing any act. Very complex, but interesting even this the application of the acts that characterize the terrorism. Now we very fast we will see two other aspects. We speak about UA, Europe, so the organization that we call EU, Europe Union. And we speak about terrorism offense. So we speak about, we call in Italian reati. The offense is the application of the penal code in order to give a pain to the terrorism. And we speak about the aims. If you read the terrorism offense in the directive that has been written in 2017, we have many different elements. And attention, we have the application of CBRN concept for the first time in Europe. Very important for Europe, because for the USA, we have the application of CBRN after the September 11 attacks. In Europe, we attend this directive in order to introduce some aspect. And now we will say, may I ask, for example, you to read ABC in this list, please. Yes, your name is? Vincenzo, please. Yes, see?
See, kidnapping or hostage taking, D,
Ok.
causing extensive destruction to a government or public facility,
Vai.
a transport system, an infrastructure facility, including an information system, a fixed platform located on a continental shelf, a public place or private property, likely to endanger human life or result in major economic loss.
Very, very important is either for the first time you focalize on the service and critical infrastructure of a country. Even this means digital system, means energy, means gas, means roads and transportation, means all the sectors of the human life in an occidental country that are essential for the life of citizen. Water, food. In this element, we have the offenses that consent to have an application of the concept of terrorism at Europe level, even for this action against these possible targets. Okay, finish the last one.
Seizure of
So this was very, very famous in the last century. The seizure of aircraft and ships was used in the Mediterranean area in many cases. It's no more applied, but 50 years ago was one of the most typical attack of terrorism. It's not finished. May I ask to please near F, please. Very, very relevant for our masters. This means that in Europe, for the definition of terrorism, there is a penal application in this case. Okay, go on, G. And finally, please. So now for the European viewpoint, I have to stress the two very relevant, important aspects. The first, we have a directory that is an application in all the countries of Europe that speak of critical essential resiliency, CER. The directive is a directive of 2022 and is applied of all countries starting from 2024, even Italy, but the same in France, the same in Germany, the same in all the Europe. And this is to protect the critical infrastructure of a country that are intended as essential services that are given to the citizen. Okay? This is the first relevant for EU. The second relevant point of the EU is the network information security that is called as NIS2. That is another directive. Directive is 2022 even, and is applied in Italy from 2024 by the Decreto Legislativo 130 of our states, that produce an action for the digital defense of the states, of all the systems, digital services, data that are traded in our states. This can be a different issue regarding to CBRN, but it's not so. because if you have an attack on a critical infrastructure, can be physical, with a CBRN attacks, for example, but can be even a logical attack. It's not a CBRN, but have the same effect on the nation. Stopped the most relevant services that you have. If you have an attack on our important systems, digital system of the nation, we have no more service in the hospital. We have no more services for population, anagraphical services, all the services that are related with the emergency, with the health of people. Okay, is another way to create another kind of attack of another state or the terrorist group to a state. We call hybrid attack, this kind of attack. Okay?
Civilian trees or civilian infrastructure. So cyber attack to civilian.
Exactly.
We have
in these days, we speak about there is an attack to this nuclear central in this part of the world. You understand immediately that this kind of attack produces another crisis other than the simple attack on the place. And the other crisis is, other than the services that is produced by the plant, you have the problem to, for example, the air component, if you speak of radioactivity. Or if you are attacking the industry, you can have a chemical component of the attack. So all these kind of issues are very, very strictly connected. For this reason, it's important to understand the rule, the international rule that are applied. Okay, go on. Okay, we speak about illegal system interference system. We speak about electromagnetic aspect, but are relevant even this, but are not relevant for the CBRN attack. Or even the treating, the last one, threatening to commit any of these acts. So even the threat of say, I will attack your plant is considered an offense, a terroristic offense. So there is a penal code that is applied. Okay, in this final part, we speak of the aims referred to the offense. What are the aims? Seriously intimidating a population, unduly compelling on a government or an international organization to perform or abstain for performing any act. We will see before in many occasions this kind of words. C, seriously establishing or destroying the fundamental political, constitutional, economic or social structure of a country or an internal organization. These are the goals that are reached by the terrorism if the event has been carried out. Finally, I report in these very simple tables the fundamental element that have been discussed in the last hour with you. We have use of violence, and on the row I have reported the different organizations that produce the definition, and you will find an X if the element has been seated in the definition. So you have in all the definition of this organization, you find the concept of violence in the definition. Threat or use of violence, the threatened is applied only in this 4 on 6, is applied on individuals and civilians in the first 4, and so on. So it is you can see from this table that are very, very different, the definition, and they are not so shared by different parts of the world. But I think can be useful to have the different information, because when you speak an attack, for example, in our country, you speak about the Italian law. You have to take into account for the penal consequences of the terrorist attack, the Italian law that has been after reconducted to the European Union law for the directive that I discussed with you a few minutes ago. Okay. Oh, yeah.
What is the law that received that directive, the European directive, the Italian law?
The Italian law was, the first one was Decreto Pisano, il primo che c'è stato, and after there is il recepimento della direttiva del 2017. Ok? È un decreto legislativo. Il numero non me lo ricordo, ma è facilmente trovabile. Prego, yes?
Psychological violence, which can be also the root for CBRN attack.
Yes.
Why it is not defined exclusively by different organizations?
The concept of psychological has been...
I mean, for example, fake news campaigns would be also dangerous and be the root for this kind of physical attack.
This was a question I was going to ask, is this a moving target? Because in some ways the fake news stuff has been around a while, but it's only become obvious in the last 5-10 years maybe.
Yeah.
And so do you feel that's going to be something that's going to have to be added to the...
Yes, yes. So in my opinion, this is that the definition is a moving, a working definition on the time, and you have to take into account the different behavioral social components of people, and in this case, the fake news and the social media from all the activity on the net are a new application last 15 years, 10 years, when you speak of mass. Okay. So this is a sort of auto image that represent a definition that are up to before the 2020, So we have to produce a new effort in order to improve the definition, introduce a new concept. After we have introduced the concept of CBRN, critical infrastructure, in the last 15 years, it's probably necessary to produce a new definition, even if the American definition of the DHS speaks about psychological aspects in the terrorism goals that target. So something that is related with your question. But if you speak about fake news, we speak about a very recent aspect and application. So it's
because some government make use of fake news.
Propaganda is the life
to explicitly define this definition.
Yeah. So this is a sort of a visual that represents the past. The future is is necessary for the future to study the real present application of the activity related to terrorism and the behavior of people, states, and groups to understand how to implement the new definition wider than before in order to gather all kinds of situations that the modern, the present world produce in this issue. Okay. Okay, we finished with the last few words on weapons of mass destruction. After the September 11 attacks, these 3 words, weapons, mass destruction, was used by the President Bush in television in order to represent the important and the relevant attacks that the USA had at that time, okay, September 11, 2001. So when we speak about weapons of mass destruction, WMD, We speak in particular for the American people, even of CBRN attack. CBRN is chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive, but in the literature we can find different definition, even if it's simple to find a representation of this concept that has been shared by the international organization, and now we will see. And in this part, we speaks about the state's code of law, and we speaks about the title 18 that defines in the code law what is a weapons of mass destruction. So in the code, penal code of USA, you have a specific definition of weapons of mass destruction for the application related to the process and to justice application. Weapons of mass destruction as defined as, look there, very, very precisely, this is the USA definition. Any explosive, incendiary, or poison gas, including the following: a bomb, grenade, rocket, having an explosive or incendiary charge of more than 4 ounces. So it's so specific in terms of weight, 4 ounces. Missile having an explosive or incendiary charge or more than 1/4 ounce, mine or device similar to any of the previously described devices. So this is the sentences that you will find on the codal, on the penal code in USA. And in general, WMD, any weapon that is designed or intended to cause death or serious bodily injury through the release, dissemination, impact of toxic or poisonous chemicals or their precursors. In this case, we have the aspect of chemical application. But not only. Any weapon involving a disease organism, we speak of biologic attack. Okay, in the penal code. And finally, any weapon that is designed to release radiation on radioactivity at the level dangerous of human life is the R of CBR. CBRN, okay? This means that in this moving activity, after the September 11 attack, the definition of the penal code has been changed in order to interesting even these CBRN possible threats. Oh, only for curiosity, NATO definition is less specific that has been used for weapon of mass destruction. Weapon of mass destruction is a weapon that is capable of a high order of destruction and of being used in such a manner as to destroy people, infrastructure, or other resources on a large scale. The concept is many people and large scale. So I speak of many people, destroy many people and destroy a large scale of infrastructure resource. I'm speaking of weapons of mass destruction. Okay. In the master, I think that many teachers in the lectures will speak about weapons of mass destruction, and in general, the meaning, the definition that is applied is this one. May I ask to read someone, please? White shirt. Yes. May you read the WMD refers? Okay, stop. Significant number of people. First element. Go on.
Device chemical device, nuclear device, radiological dispersion device, and radiological excluder device.
So if I speak of weapon of mass destruction, I speak typically of the CBRN threat. For this reason, this kind of issue is so relevant for many states. We will see that there are, in the statistical, there are not many CBRN events, but the states are terrorized by this kind of events. For the political reason, institutional reason, fear in the population, panic, and the loss of confidence of the government. Many aspects are so relevant that many states work on the CBRN activity in order to prevention, in order to manage the emergency if is needed. And even though the majority of the attack for the terrorism are attacks, explosive, are not CBRN, and is a war, okay? We will see the number after. We are finished. So, the term CBRNA, that is the last recent definition, but before we call the same issue NBC, nuclear, biological, chemical, and before in the last century, we speaks about ABC, okay, atomic, biological, chemical. So this term is changing during the last 80 years in the states, in the institutional definition, but means substantially the application of the chemical attack, the biological threat, the radiological threat. Dirty bomb is the typical attack that speaks when we speak about radiological, nuclear, and explosion is associated with the other terms, but typically, I said before, the explosion is without any C, without any B, without any R used for a simple attack for terrorism. Is the 99% of the attack of terrorism a simple E. Okay, very, very important definition for the EU, European Union, and a different definition from the USA. Is it possible to read, please, on the side, please, may I ask you to read the term CBRN? Okay, please. Yeah. You can see two words that are relevant: accidental and deliberate. Accidental means that there is no the volunteer of this, and in the USA, if I speak of CBRN, I speak about an attack. So it means that there is a threat. An accidental can be a plant that is working, is producing something that is completely legal, that is there is a problem in the plant, and I have to manage an emergency, for example, for a chemical dispersion of material agents. In the European vision, this kind of event is a CBRN event because it is an accidental event. For the USA, it is not the same. Yeah.
An earthquake.
Yeah.
In a
Yeah.
region where.
Can be a repercussion of the natural events, it can be a CBRN event that is defined in this vision of the UA and is managed as an accident. Is not a deliberate action, men think and men applied. we will see in the second part many different situations that this definition produced. Yeah, we use the word with different meaning. This means that, so starting from the definition, we have all a consequence in the organization for reacting to the different situation.
Problem is that I could address something that's not.
A problem is a different vision that is been to be known and managed. But if you speak in Europe, when you speak of CBRN, you intend even the accident. In NATO is not the same case. The NATO is applied the similar definition that we have in USA. Okay? The fundamental difference, accident or non-accident, we discuss after this one. The last, and we stop here because it's time to have a break. I spoke before about NBC, nuclear, biological, and chemical definition that has been used roughly in the last century. After the September 11 attack, the term that has been used is CBRN, okay? It's 25 years that we use CBRN. Before was NBC. If you speak about military application, typically you find NBC as a definition. Now in the new organization is CBRN, but historically you have NBC. And as said before, atomic, biological, and chemical was the acronyms that has been used in the middle of the last century after the Second World War. Okay, if I speak so by air activity, typically I refer to dirty bomb. So I speak about RE. I need explosive activity on radioactive agent for the dispersion of the radiological agents. Okay. Oh, bene, okay. This is a simple sentences, and I finish there. For the USA, a sentence that say exactly what I discussed before, and this is a Government Accountability Officer, GAO, G-A-O, refers as chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive CBRN weapons, also known as weapons of mass destruction. So if I speak about CBRN, these are specific weapons that are in the category of weapons of mass destruction, by definition for USA. So are a similar use of the concept. Okay. We stop here. And I propose to you, if you have a question, otherwise we will see at 10 minutes to 11. It's okay for you? So we have a break for a coffee and to have a more oxygen in the room. Salve.
Lei lavora quindi per la Presidenza del Consiglio?
Sì, diciamo che ho lavorato molti anni in questo ambito quando sono stato prima in protezione civile.
Perché io sono della Protezione Civile.
Io sono stato in protezione civile quando c'era Bertolaso, e Bertolaso era commissario per gli attacchi non convenzionali tra il 2003 e il 2010. Dopo che ci sono stati gli attacchi alle Torri Gemelli, ci fu un nucleo operativo che si chiamava nucleo operativo 3275 tecnicamente, che era a dirette dipendenze del capo del Dipartimento della Protezione Civile, Bertolaso, che ha gestito la difesa civile in Italia in caso d'attacco CBRN.
Adesso c'è ancora.
No, poi con Gabrielli la difesa civile, dopo un braccio di ferro enorme, è ritornata sotto diciamo, il Ministero degli Interni, perché è un'attività tipica del Ministero degli Interni. Era stato uno scippo prodotto da Letta in quel caso, che aveva voluto che fosse il Dipartimento a avere il commissariamento. E poi
Adesso non c'è più nulla sotto la presidenza.
no, adesso ci sta, adesso sotto la presidenza, l'organizzazione è totalmente sotto la presidenza ed è organizzata dal consigliere militare. Quindi c'è l'ufficio del consigliere militare e la presidenza del Consiglio dei Ministri a Palazzo Verospi, non so se conosci, proprio attaccato a Palazzo Chigi, dove viene applicato, e voi siete coinvolti come protezione civile, siete coinvolti in questa nuova attività che si chiama Comitato Interministeriale Resilienza. Ci partecipa D'Angelo. Tu dove stai? In quale...
Io sto in via Torchiani. Come ufficio non ci occupiamo dei rischi naturali. Io e i miei due colleghi, quindi me...
Io pure stavo a Via Orpiano comunque a lavorare a quel tempo, parecchi anni fa. E poi ho lavorato all'Ordine Centrale di Sicurezza a Palazzo Chigi per 13 anni, proprio diciamo su questi temi col consigliere militare. Adesso invece lavoro al Dipartimento Casa Italia. Mi occupo di prevenzione strutturale e ricostruzione.
Un'altra cosa, per quanto riguarda la definizione del governo statunitense, cioè il fatto che loro attribuiscono matrici terroristiche a questo tipo di pericoli.
Sì, o attacco militare o attacco terroristico.
I casi occidentali non sono proprio considerati come...
È una lunga storia, perché loro sono partiti dalla difesa civile. Prima del 78, prima della FEMA, voi conoscerete adesso come è organizzato, adesso stanno sotto la DHS e la FEMA sta sotto il Dipartimento dell'Homeland Security. Non so se conoscete un po' la normativa americana.
No, in realtà no.
Questo sarebbe interessante vederla. Prima tutto quanto era orientato alla difesa civile e quindi diciamo non c'era il concetto di protezione civile, cioè loro erano preoccupati dell'esplosione della bomba nucleare sostanzialmente. Poi che è successo? Quando c'era Jimmy Carter ci furono delle alluvioni, le solite esondazioni di Mississippi, Missouri, nella zona della Louisiana, e fu un disastro, come fu un disastro nel 2004 poi successivamente. E quindi lui chiuse la Civil Defense Unit e aprì la FEMA, che era la Federal Emergency Management Agency. E la FEMA è stata in riferimento fino al 2001, poi è arrivato l'attacco alle Torri Gemelle ed i danni naturali sono rientrati invece sotto il DHS, Department of Homeland Security, e questo dipartimento ha dato molta più importanza invece agli attacchi alle infrastrutture critiche e alla gestione dell'immigrazione. Insomma, gli ultimi fatti, la famosa ICE fa parte dell'IHS, che è struttura, che è quella che controlla l'immigrazione. Vabbè, adesso è proprio una polizia militare sul territorio, una cosa, diciamo, per noi è abbastanza difficilmente concepibile, però insomma, loro ce l'hanno così. E quindi in questa oscillazione degli Stati Uniti la parte naturale ha avuto meno rilevanza. Però dovreste vedere, in questo video c'è sta gente che queste cose c'ha i video, quello che è successo con l'inondazione del 2004-2005 nel Missouri, quando il governatore di quello Stato a un certo punto ha accusato lo Stato federale di aver ritardato col DHS talmente tanto l'intervento della protezione civile FEMA, che la gente è morta. No, ma sono morti praticamente tutti, perché non arrivava nessuno. Ognuno diceva arriveranno, ma non è arrivato nessuno. La gente stava sui tetti delle case, è stata 3-4 giorni, alla fine sono morti. Nessuno li ha soccorsi. Insomma, è interessante. Gli americani non sono un buon esempio per certi ambiti. Meglio rimanere in casa. E quindi i rischi naturali che c'è lì adesso all'ufficio?
L'ufficio c'è l'ingegner Pagliara.
Pagliara, come?
Direttrice che sta per andare in pensione.
Lo conosco, c'ha una certa età. Io stavo nello staff di Bertolaso che si chiamava Nucleo Operativo 3275, che si occupava di attacchi non convenzionali, questi qui, sulla popolazione, tra il 2003 e il 2010. Poi dopo sono andato a Palazzo Chigi. No, adesso a Casa Italia sto da 2 anni, poi sono stato... Allora, io sto con Ferrara a Casa Italia, Ferrara, Luigi Ferrara.
Della questione, della
Beh, quindi ci avete a che fare? Beh, sì, l'FSC quest'anno abbiamo, ci siamo massacrati a vicenda, diciamo, e ancora non siamo arrivati.
Le politiche europee, però sì, ci comunque
Noi quest'anno ci abbiamo avuto un sacco di lavoro, come dovrebbe essere finalizzato.
A me interessava in realtà la parte, diciamo, della parte dei disastri naturali, però sulla penultima slide l'ha chiarito, insomma, che c'è la parte accidentale, comunque
ti comprende pure quella parte lì.
Sì, da noi è così,
Sì.
non è così. E anche se poi è sempre dibattuta sta cosa, perché nell'ambito militare se tu parli di CBRN loro intendono solo attacco, non c'è niente da fare. Quindi se tu vai a che fare i militari qui dentro, quello lo
Sì,
intendono.
infatti anche vabbè, le lezioni le lecture di ieri erano tutte sulla parte radiologica, nucleare, eccetera. Però mi interessava capire se sotto la parte di protezione civile ci fosse anche una componente.
Allora, è splittata in due, la componente attacchi, diciamo così, accidentali per noi è protezione civile e quindi se ne occupa Francesco Geri come persona, dei più competenti sul radiologico, quello ha scritto le ultime norme, tra l'altro, un ingegnere. E invece se ci fosse l'attacco vero e proprio prenderebbe tutto quanto in mano la Presidenza del Consiglio dei Ministri con l'Ufficio del Consiglio Militare e con questo nuovo comitato che si chiama CIR, Comitato Interministeriale Resilienza. Prima c'era il NISP e c'era il COPS, che era il Comitato Politico Strategico, fino a qualche mese fa in realtà. Poi la riorganizzazione che c'è stata. E poi c'è pure un altro organismo dei servizi segreti in realtà, cioè poi lì dipenderà dal presidente.
Quello è l'ufficio che sta a Palazzo Chigi, sempre.
Il palazzo Grospi sta di tutto a Palazzo Chigi, dietro, via l'impresa. Sì, sì, hanno al quarto piano, consiglio militare, però lavorano al consiglio militare, ma ci avranno un ufficio dentro l'ufficio del segretario generale. A breve verrà fatto un ufficio infrastrutture critiche, anzi c'è già il DPCM. Vabbè, diciamo che ci va a essere nel 2009, perché io stavo con Luisa Franchina, non so se il nome tu hai sentito, ma era la persona che si occupava e dovevamo fare l'ufficio nel 2009, siamo nel 2026, ancora non l'hanno fatto, diciamo, mi dà l'idea di come gestiamo queste cose.
No, io tra l'altro mi occupo di protezione climatica delle infrastrutture critiche, piattaforma STEP, quindi DICTEC, GreenTech, sono dell'Aquila, quindi insomma terremoto, sia come collaudo personale che poi come attività professionale, posso dire tanto, perciò no, perciò mi interessava capire.
È tutto un mondo.
Soprattutto ecco la parte climatica, adesso noi stiamo facendo anche la revisione a medio termine dei programmi e c'è la parte difesa e la parte infrastrutture critiche.
Molto rilevante.
Però ecco, per mia inclinazione, ripeto, sia purtroppo personale che professionale, poi mi interessava molto la parte del rischio legato alle catastrofi naturali. Come sviluppo anche epidemiologico oppure dispersione all'Aquila abbiamo grandi poli farmaceutici, ad esempio Centopè, Sanofi, quindi già dopo il sisma del 2009 c'era stato un problema di
Io ho fatto l'emergenza Aquila, conosco bene, sono all'Aquila un anno, quindi è partito il 6 aprile, la notte, per andare.
Che era in protezione civile?
Sì, stavo in protezione civile, mi hanno assegnato l'assistenza alla colazione, facevo mangiare tutta la colazione. Conosco, stato abbastanza tempo lì.
No, infatti il pollato proprio fatto dal vivo, poi la protezione.
Sì. E comunque è la protezione civile che gestisce questa cosa quando c'è l'incidente, cioè non volontario. Quindi
No, lo guarderò con occhio ancora di più.
verrà, perché tanto il Geri viene, quando viene Francesco Geri è la persona più rilevante su questo tema, che è di tanti anni e conosce tutti i temi.
Anche questa cosa.
Però poi va bene.
Vabbè, grazie.
Prego.
Forse non lo so, però forse tra un mesetto c'è da fare. Però adesso devo vedere come per la proceduta. Perché altro non sapere se devo fare comunque l'internship, anche se fosse della proceduta, perché comunque lo voglio fare. Infatti devo aspettare 3 anni. Interessava comunque vedere che ha quindi mi interessava mettere il pensiero, fare il montaggio che c'è dove penso di sì, perché praticamente però non so le dinamiche della programmazione. Sì. Dovete farlo presto. Iniziare già presto. Non dico. Faccio un po' di fai montare poi decide il alla fine decidi quanto.
Sì, dopo come dici tu, non vedo vivere guardare senza tanto si chiama Scusi per lo spoiler di prima. Sia la definizione di genocidio che di chi viene insegnato. Senza quello non
conoscere che dovrebbe essere unico, poi applicare l'università sugli occhi.
il problema della
Politico.
peso della comunità internazionale a consiglio di differenza. Ovviamente la Corte Penale, giustizia, il Consiglio di sicurezza vuole conoscere. Ci sono dei momenti in cui la giustizia toglie la pace del paese. Insomma, è un challenging. Grazie.
Prego, figurati. Ok. No, no. Posso entrare dopo? Sì, mi pare entrare. Sì, l'unica cosa di rispettare quello che vi hanno chiesto adesso è scritto, non so come funziona la banca di registrazione. Lei ha segnato che è presente, ha messo l'ora, ha fatto tutto quanto questa mattina. Perfetto. Vabbè.
Tanto fa tempo di una telefonata.
Tranquillo. No problem. Ok? Can we restart? Ok. Well, a new group of slides for the second part, and we start with the statistical on terrorist attacks, and we will speak about soft target, hard target, and strategical asset. In particular, I will propose you the results of a study that I did 4 years ago, 3 years ago. And these results has been published in international review and even in the conference, periodical conference managed by the master. This year we have the SIC conference in Rome in September, October of this year, please. So I will present a very sharply the global terrorism database, and we define what is, and after that I will focus the attention on these two areas. First analysis worldwide, the results for terrorism attacks, and we will see many numbers, visual, graphics, many information. And in the second part, we'll focus on the G7 countries in order to understand in the Occidental countries, and in how in Italy even, what are the number of the terrorism attacks. Okay. So we will focus the attention on 21 years, starting from the 2000. And so we arrive in first case in 2011, 2011, and 2020 as end of the period. So or 20 years or 21 years of the windows of analysis. These data were available at international level and were public up to 2 years ago, roughly when Trump was at the White House as a president last is 2024. He stopped the activity of the publication of this data. Before, the data were public and they were available to university and to institutional of Occidental countries for analysis and the processing of the data. And In the analysis, we focus the attention on before for economic areas. So we divide in geographical areas of the world. After we consider the type of target in the attack, in terroristic attacks, and we have a different view for the government site, public commercial site, or in general public cultural areas or building and so on. After that, we have an analysis year by year of the attack in different area. And finally, we distinct the weapons that were preferred by the attack with a specific focus on CBR attacks and explosive attacks. We take into account even for the terrorism attack, the incendiary and the ballistic attacks in the report that we will see. And finally, I said before, we focus on the G7 country results. The Global Terrorism Database, the acronym which is GTD, okay? If you have the internet, it's very easy for you to access to the site. The site is managed by a consortium that is related with the University of Maryland in USA. This database has been up to the 2021 available, I say before, to provide data by request of people. So in that case, I studied the problem at that time and I asked for all the data. So it was possible for me to analyze it with the University of Tor Vergata and Western Malaysia and other people this data and provide these results that we will see today. If you attempt today to request the data, you cannot more have the information, and you find the description of the University of Maryland of the reasons, because there was no more of financed many activity in the research field by the new Trump organization and institution, and this kind of activity has been considered only for the USA application. Okay, but up to the 2021, you can find that data very, very relevant, starting from 1970. So the data are roughly 50 years of gathered data on terroristic events. It's the most relevant, important database for terrorism up to now existing. A similar database has been put on the table by the European Union starting from 2007, roughly, only for EU country, obviously. You can find the report at annual level by the Europol activity. You will find on the internet, if you find terrorist report of Europol, you will find a yearly publication regarding all the European country and all the statistics on the terrorist attack for EU. Okay, but in particular in this moment we focus on this database that is an international database, all the world containing in the data. So it's very, very relevant. The first analysis has been conducted on the period 2000 to 2019, the first analysis, and the second analysis 2000 to 2020. So 20 years the first time, and 21 years of period in the second times. In order to understand what were at the time the trends for terrorism attack and what were the numbers that characterize the event, even for the CBRN application. In general, we can say that today in my database, because it's no more available by the global terrorism database. I have more than 200,000 terrorist attacks described in the database. The information are more than 95,000 kinds of bombing, 20,000 assassination, and 15,000 kidnapping and hostage event, starting from 1970, I said before. So each event is described by at least 45 variable, means specific information of the record. Okay, and a single record is an event. So you can have the data, the newspaper that reported in the news, the information, the description of the event, the kind of weapon, the rationale of the target of the terrorist, if there were dead or victims in general with the attack. So many information. In the last period, this kind of research of the University of Maryland has been very complex, because the explosion of information on the internet gives many sources of information in different parts of the world. So there were many researchers that were involved in this kind of database. And there was a database that was relevant cost for the finance of USA. So in this sense, the activity of Trump in the first period of his mandate was to reduce the cost of, in general, public administration, instruction, and university. You know that this was the policy of the new courts of USA. Anyway, for the moment, we have in our database all this information for the past. The definition that has been used by the Global Terrorism Database to define a terrorist attack is this one. May I ask you please to read? Please. So it's necessary to define the terrorist attack if you want to have an evaluation as a numbering of the event. Because if you have no clear indication of the meaning of the words we discussed before, it's very difficult to take in the database this event rather than this other event. So it's necessary to have a very clear algorithm with definition and application in order to introduce in the record the information of the database. Specifically, we have three definitions that have been all present in event to be considered a terrorist event. The first is the incident must be intentional. So it's not accidental, but is an intentional action of someone. Si può dare richiesto di partecipare? Okay. I hope that who is in the video call can hear me. May you confirm that you can hear me? I hope so. Colomba, can you hear me? No question. I hope that
yes, doctor, we can hear you. Yes.
Yes, sorry. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your reaction. Thank you. We are alive. Thank you. Okay, so three important attributes that have been present, all three. The first is the incident must be intentional. Okay, is a conscious calculation on the part of the perpetrator of the action. First. Second one, the incident must entail some level of violence or immediate threat of violence. So the word violence is present in the act. It's necessary that there is a violent action against someone or something. Okay? I say someone or something, could be a property, could be a critical infrastructure, could be people. Okay? Third element, fundamental, the perpetrators of the incident must be subnational actors. So in this database, I cannot find state terrorism action. This is even very, very interesting exclusion. So I define terrorism only with the action of a group of people against the state, not a state against another state when the state organized the event. It's clear the definition. We spoke before about this, remember? Please.
So how would something like the Lockerbie bombing fall into that? Because it was organized by the Libyans against Western nations. That's how
Yes, well, this could be an example very difficult to manage for this kind of the definition. If it's clear that is a state that organizes a terrorist action against another state, this is considered a war. In this section is not considered for the recognition and the introduction in the database.
Because the attack, because Lockerbie bombing was against a civilian target.
Yes, but was considered a sort of war attack as not more terrorism for this application, even though the events is describing as a similar effects. Okay. Okay. Clear, this point is very, very important. Go to the first analysis. Now I will speak of regional, macro-regional, geographic relevant regions results in order to understand the dimension of the problem. Exists this problem or is a completely invented problem by the community? So in 20 years, we registered, we can see here, 131,000, more than 131,000 terroristic events. This is the number of events. You will find all these slides, okay? I leave when I will go on the PC. This is impressive, very, very impressive number. And on this table, we have the representation of the region that are macro geographical area in which we divided all the globe. So we speak about the Middle East and North Africa, and the first of the rank with roughly 50,000 events, terroristic events in 20 years. Represent more than 35% of the terroristic events in the world. Middle East and North Africa. And it was before now, I mean, the last number is 2019. So before COVID period. After that, in the second in the rank, we have South Asia with 43,000, more than 43,000 events. That is roughly 33% of the terroristic event. And so all the other region. We can see our region, Western Europe. In 20 years, we have more than 3,000 events in Europe, in Western Europe. And North America, for example, we have 800, more than 800 terroristic events, but it's only the 0.7% of all the world number of events. So this is a first very important information. We are speaking of a problem that exists and is concentrated in some places of the world, principally, but in some cases is of interest even for Occidental states, USA, for example, September 11 attacks is very, very famous, all of us. But even in Europe, we had in the last 20 years, many, many terroristic attacks. See, yeah.
Is this attack defined independently by the effects, or
In terms of
Independent by the effects. No, we registered in the record the event only if the attack is arrived to be realized. Independent, so if you are a victim, so you are dead, it's not relevant at this moment. You are considered to be inserted in the record if the attack has been arrived to be realized. After that, you characterize no one has been a victim without non-casualties, non-fatalities. These are the element of the record. But the important thing is that the event has been arrived to the code book. This is the name of the global terrorism. That is the document that describe as the data are gathered all together, speaks about in attack at the port of the target. Okay, means that you are arrived to the target to obtain your results. After that, you can have effect or non-effect, but now we will count the number of deaths and the number of victims in general, and even for different targets, we represent with tables different categories of effects. Okay, so wait a moment, we will see all things.
The CBN issue, so for example, COVID, kind of event, natural event, or not.
The definition of COVID is not a CBRN. COVID has been recognized as a biological crisis due to a pandemic evolution. But we are out of the period of COVID because we are concentrating on before the 20 years before the COVID, okay? Because the data for the COVID period are not available more on the net. We have only for Europe some data. If you want, at the end of the lesson, I show you on the internet the Europol data and the relations that are being released periodically by the police on this issue. Okay. We are speaking of, in this moment, of all kinds of terrorism events, and it's not relevant. It's CBRN, incendiary. It's not relevant. All type, all kind of weapons that can be imagined. So, for example, September 11 is within this event, because he is a terrorist, has been recognized as a terrorist event, it has been described in the database. Okay? This graphical view with the visual represent well the distribution of the event. You can see that Middle East and North Africa are and South Africa in general are represent together more than 70% of the terroristic event. It's very important, this view of the world. And many, if you go at the top of the rank, where you will find Australia, Oceania, that are places where the terrorist events are minimal.
Amazing.
You are Australian, yes. Unfortunately, are minimal, but even are minimal in North America. So and so in Europe. And the problem of the Europe, we will say, is very, very connected with the Western and Eastern Europe, now more than before, caused by the war in act. But the war is not only the war of 2022. The war for the Ukraine and Russia started in 2014. And we have example of this impact in the representation, because 2014 is represented in the range of the period that we considered. Okay. This is another representation with the table year by year, okay, starting from 2000 up to 2019, the number
of terrorist event per region year by year. And this could be very interesting for statistical point of view. The total number is the same, is 131,000. This is the number, so if we translate in a visual image the previous table, we obtain this kind of representation of the number year by year of terrorist attacks in the world, in all the world, okay? And you can observe a peak, 2014. It's not the case. It's a peak due to the first Crimea war that around produce many number of attacks, and the Syria crisis, another very big problem that we faced roughly 10 years ago. Okay, we will see in depth now. Focus now on Western Europe and Eastern Europe, the situation. The blue one is Western and the green is Eastern. Look there. This peak is the first Crimea war for Europe. If you have a war around the world, you have terrorism. This is a clear law. In general speaking, we had that the annual number of attacks in Western Europe is no more than 250 number of events per year. Very interesting, even this data. The blue line represents year by year the number of terroristic events in the Western Europe. Now we compare the Western Europe with the North America. Could be very interesting, even this vision. So Western Europe is the blue line, and the red one is the North American. So with the focal is the number of terroristic events. We have that Western Europe is very more interested on the terrorism phenomena respect to the North America. That is under the 50 events by years, typically. Only in the last part of the graphic, we have 100 events in a year. So substantially, we speak about North America is USA, Canada. Okay. So the problem of terrorism is more present in Europe than in the USA. Yeah, please. The name, Antonella. It's very difficult. I have other visual image, and I wanted to reply to your question at the end of the image, because I think that there is a different position regarding the target. Some target in USA are appeal, and there is not the same appeal in Europe. Okay, but wait a few graphics and we will discuss the question. Another interesting, very interesting, the number of fatalities, death, and casualties, victims. So the red line is the number of events, the orange is number of death, fatalities, okay, number of death, orange. See the impressive number, more than 45,000 people in 2014 for events of terrorism at worldwide level, we speak, yeah? Okay. This, yes. the same for casualty victims that are around the same value. Is the green line. Look at the first peak. Is the period of 2001 was the victims are of the September 11 attacks. Very, very clear. And the orange line contained the 3,000 people that were killed by the 11 September attacks by the terrorists. So it's very, very interesting because for each peak, if we had the time, we could find a historical reason, a political situation that manage and improve the number of attacks and the number of victims and dead. So this is very important. The database produce even these very, very significant maps. And I think that this is possible to have even now, the service for the previous period, no more than 2021 for the data. And for example, this is the representation of the 2001, so 11 September attacks, and in the red one is the number of attack. And we will say that USA is one of the places we have the number of casualty. We speak about casualty in this representation. The number of casualty was very, very high in the USA, but was very, very high in India, was very, very high in this place that is Algeria. Do you remember the spring period for the North Africa? Okay. And the same for other nations that are represented in the red. And the scale of representation of number or of casualties is this line at the end of the graphics. Okay, very easy to understand. You can produce for any period the representation of this map on the internet. There was a free of charge service that previously was active. I don't know if it's possible now, but up to 2 years ago was available. This was another screenshot for the 2014. So Syria crisis, Crimea crisis. Look at the place where the red one is present, Ukraine. Crimea is here, Crimea, and Syria, and we have Pakistan, Bangladesh, you know, that is a very, very complex area, even that. And in general, war, terrorism are typical of Africa. Africa is a place where we reverse weapons, and there are many, many conflicts, terrorism attacks in general. These two graphical and visual has been produced by me for you in order to provide as this tool can be useful for understand the geopolitical situation with a simple image. For the terrorist point of view, I see, yeah. Now, we have a comparison of three areas. The Western Europe is the blue line. The red is the North America line. The green one is the Eastern Europe. And we focus on the dead. Fatalities is number of dead, okay? It's not a case that we have a first peak in 2001, and for the USA are more than 3,000 deaths. After that, for Eastern Europe, we have a peak in 2014. First war, Ukraine and the Russian, Crimea crisis, so with the few information, we recognize the different situation, political situation, and the war terroristic situation in the world. Now we focus the attention, if you are interested in this kind of data, on two different, completely different targets that have been changed in the last 50 years. In particular, we focus on the last 2 decades, 2000, 2020, and we speak about soft target and hard target. Very, very important identification of possible target. Has been recorded in the database, but even in our memory, if you want, that in many cases, terrorism in the last decades attack simple public site, theater, place, transportation mean, metro, bus, airport. We are not speaking of attack to the government site, intelligence site, military facilities. We speak about place where civilian, normal people going, for example, for shopping. We remember Marsiglia, Nizza, Paris, Madrid, London. In the last 20 years, we have a very relevant number of terroristic attack in simple public private buildings, not relevant building for the power, relevant for people. And for this reason, in the literature, it's 20 years roughly, that we speak about a soft target representing this public place, private place, where civilian people normally conduct the life. Could be work, could be shopping, could be stay in the theater or sport or anything so you intend as a typical life for an Occidental person, okay? For this reason, we distinguish in this analysis that I will show you soft target, so public target, and we will see the definition more precisely in a moment, respect to hard target that are hardened structure that are thinked to be protected by attack. I speak about the house of the government. I worked for 30 years in Palazzo Chigi in Rome. That is the place where the government and the president of the council of the minister works. It's clear that we are organized to defend this kind of building. It's very complex to arrive and enter in the building if you are not attended, you are not registered, you are not recognized. Very, very complex. But it's very simple to arrive, for example, in a theater, in a commercial center, in a mall, or in a place where you stay with your children with a bicycle to play in the garden. There are no control in that case. And that place is not protected against a possible terroristic attack. So, in this analysis, we represent soft target as, with this definition, vulnerable material or human assets, which in principle should not be specifically protected, okay? And in general, we speak of a soft target when I speak of schools, church, sports and recreational venues, malls, commercial center, transportation hubs and hospital, airport, port, okay? The airport is in the middle, in reality, is more protected as a structure, but is not so protected as, for example, the house of the government, or the military house, or the intelligence building. Some definition, for example, European Commission Joint Research Center, JRC, defined the soft target for Europe, areas with high people concentration, metro and train transportation, airport, means of mass transportation, stadiums, concert venues, shopping mall, pedestrian areas. Very, very large definition. The effort that I did when I analyzed the database was to individuate the different category that has been characterized as soft target in some case or are hard target in another case. In this table, you will find the definition that I proposed and that has been accepted. We worked with the university. I remember that this kind of results have been published on the magazine, technical magazine, obviously. And in the yellow cells, you find the subcategory that are produced by the database related to the soft target. For example, property, private citizen and property are a soft target, are not a soft target, the military target. So are the blue represented. Police, government are blue, but business, institution and religious, transportation, educational institution means school and university. Okay, terrorist and non-state militia is not interest as a category. Utilities means gas, water, all the organization that provides service fundamental for the life of the citizen. Journalist and media organization and people means TV, television, means radio, means all organization that produce information for people. Today, even the web. Telecommunication, airports, tourist organization, food and water supply, fundamental for the life. It's a category that can be attacked by a terrorist event. Maritime and abortion-related are organizations that are involved in, you say, in particular, in the face of life and something like that. Anyway, produce this categorization, this structure of paradigms for the application of the database. The results that we obtain are this one. The total number of the terrorist attacks that are worldwide distributed has been reparted on the different categories. Very, very interesting. We have that the roughly 27% of terroristic attacks in 20 years has been concentrated on the private citizen and properties. It's the first of the rank. It is a soft target. And only the second, third, and fourth, we have a military, police, and government general target, and so hard target. And after that, we have a list very, very wide of soft target: business, institution, religion, transportation, educational institution. After that, utilities, journalists, and media. Very relevant for terrorism. In this line, we have the diplomatic building activity, so the foreign ministry, and after all the other category. The important results is that the soft target sums of the event is roughly 73,000 events. So the half of the events in the world are against soft target, no against hard target. This means for our culture that we have to defend a place, commercial center, hospital, university. Today, you stay in a university, a public university, you enter without any kind of control. Any person can enter there, even a terrorist. This is a problem. Could be a problem. Okay. So this is the first results that is relevant. In particular, I say 48% are soft target of the total, and 43% are hard target. So the soft target are more than the hard target terroristic event. Sorry, non ti sento. Yes, now we live in 50 minutes. You will see, I think, 20 slides with the results. So wait a moment, I will see precisely if the attack is in a plaza, if in an hospital, is in a university, or is in another part of the country that is soft, not defended. Okay? The important thing now is to understand that we face a problem that is very big for our culture. We are not attacked in some place specifically, but we are attacked in general in places where are not defend measure provided. Okay. So in general, year by years, if I to see the evolution number of attacks on hard target and soft target, I will find this kind of trends. The yellow one is soft target as a number of events per year, and the blue one is hard target. See, it is important that in the 2014, you have the blue line that is greater than the yellow one, because there was a war, there was a situation of war in Syria and in Crimea. And the terrorist around the war is against institution, is not against people. It's clear? In this in this new visual, we face the question for the soft target. We can number the number of fatalities. Yes, the red line is the number of fatalities in attack that are registered in soft target place, and we see. This is the graphics, the red one. Okay. Okay. In this graphics, there is a sort of rank of the soft target subcategory, describe the number of attacks and describing the number of fatalities, target subcategory by target subcategory. Now I enter in the detail. If I speak of private citizen property, I have a general information, but I know that are in the soft target. In the next slide, I will see what is in the private citizen properties detailed. So at the first position of the rank, we have a private citizen property with the 57% of the attack respect to the total attack on the soft target considered here. So the second is business. The third is religious institution, figures. When I speak attacks, I speak attacks even the building, but even the person, even the organization. I can kill a journalist, I can attack the site of the RAI television, okay? For me, it's an attack, but could be an attack on infrastructure or on against people. I take into account all the kind of attack. So this is the rank for the sub-target that we can recognize in 20 years. I think that it could be interesting to have this kind of information. The total number of attack, we said before, is more than 70,000 in 20 years. Number of fatality, more than 150,000. Okay, if I consider the first five in this table, the first five subcategories, I describe year by year the number of attack, okay? And the blue one, private citizen and properties. I can see the number that is growing up in the period after the 2013. and I have a maximum in that area. And this is even related to the war, even though I saw before, during the war, the attack are more concentrated on the hard target, rather than soft target, but are not completely absent for the soft target. In the red one, we have attack to business, means shopping, means general activity, professional activity, okay, all activity that can be considered business, and so on. Okay, ranking of specific item for number of terrorism. Now the question is, can I be more precisely identify the category? Yes, I can arrive with the database that was provided before by the global terrorism database to this kind of detail. I can determine if the attack is a house, apartment, residence attack, or is a place attack, a square attack, or is a school, or is a retail, a grocery, or in general is a bakery, or is an attack to building, or is an attack to a restaurant, bar, cafe. I can discriminate within a single category in many different sub-categories that I call in the work items. Okay, when I speak about items, I refer to the maximum level of refinement that I can have in the analysis. So this is very interesting. I have at the first place of the rank, the attack in the apartment, in the house, terroristic attack. After that, I have attack in the place, in the square, in general marketplace. This means even so mall, commercial center. But for example, I have even bank, medical in Texas hospital, or public area, if you say garden, parking lot, garage, beach, public building. Okay, so yeah, I can have many information specific by this kind of database. And this is the representation of the first three in the rank: house, marketplace, school, and the representation year by year of the number of the event that I registered worldwide. My analysis is in this time for all the world. Yeah.
Subjects, perpetrators, words, and
yeah.
things that they put.
Yeah. The most one you have. Now we go with the glasses on the CBRN world, and we focus on the hour issue. Well, we see before all the contests, and now we focus on the CBR terrorism attack on specific on building. We speak about an attack if the attack is, as we consider, if the attack is in a structure, a building, a facility, okay, in order to have a representation of the CBRN weapon use respect to the terroristic attack. Okay, if you go on the code book of the global terrorism that you can download it by the site, you find the global terrorism database taxonomy of weapon. This is the table. The first is the definition of chemical. Is interesting for us? Yes. The second one is the definition of biological. Yes, of interest. Radiological. Yes, of interest. Nuclear, of interest. Explosive definition. Even if it is an explosive mixed with is an hybrid application of another previous typical weapon. For example, explosion for the radiological application is dirty bomb. Okay. After that, we have other kind of the definition of weapon: firearms, fake weapons, incendiary, very interesting incendiary. Mill means with arma bianca in Italian we say mill attack. Vehicle, You remember in France, in Marsilia, the attack along the road with the vehicle, in general sabotage and others. So these are the taxonomy that are applied in the database. And it's very easy to extrapolate the chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear type of attack for the data that are available. So we focus our attention on the first three. There are not nuclear applications, so it's not useful to conduct the application up to date. We hope it will be no. After that, we focus even on explosive, but even on the incendiary. Okay? This is the first very, very relevant report of the cumulative CBRNE event paid 4 years, okay? Taking into account the building, we focus on building. So I extrapolate from the database all the definition of the items that were related to building. For example, the first in the line is military barrack base headquarters check post. Okay. Second in the line, marketplace, typically is a commercial center, a mall. Police building, house, apartment, grocery, retail, bakery. We speak about structure, shops, and so on. So you can see that the number of CBRNE with the incendiary even taken into account is very relevant. The total is this number here. Sorry. Is this number here? Okay. The total number of CBRE incendiary even is represented by 18,000 attacks in 20 years. 2 buildings. And the first 4 items of these tables have been represented with this image to indicate the evolution year by year of the number of the attack. As you say, at the first position, we have the military barracks and in general headquarters for military application. The peak is during the period of crisis in 2044. When we have the number of this period that now are living now, the present period, we have impressive numbers of attack. Now we are only to imagine, but I think 10 years starting from now, it's possible that we have all the information of this period with the war in Ukraine, the war in Gaza, the war in Iran, and the attack of Venezuela. All this kind of activity produce terrorism. And this will be registered, recorded in another database, probably more in the global database, or maybe the global database will be reopened in the new administration in the future in the USA. But this show clearly that where is a war, there is terrorism in the around of the war. This is a very, very important table, because in this table we can represent the total number of CBR events, even of the number of explosive events in 20 years. Look there. For the explosive, on the total of 18,585 terroristic events, we have that 18,500 are explosive, simple explosive. We have 71 C chemical attacks, 5 biological attacks, 9 radiological attacks in 20 years. Okay. If now we express in terms of percentage, we have that explosive is more than 99% of the attack in 20 years. Okay. Are not so relevant, the CBR. Now the question is, well, why are here if CBR is not relevant? This is a question that has many answers and is possible to discuss. But the central problem is that one single CBRN event for a state is for the government destructive. Because there is completely in the population the problem of panic to manage the fact that is no there are not information regarding the behavior, regarding the effect in a long time, for example, in a dirty bomb. To you can imagine, for example, we hope never, but Stazione Termini, Roma, Termini Station, Roma, explosion of a dirty bomb in the middle of the city. Means that you have probably for 100 radius, I say 100, but probably is more, if there are specific wind that transport the dust, the radioactive dust agent, that are not more usable. People have to be put in another place of the city or another place of the region. So it is not a simple earthquake that is a problem, a huge problem. It's more and more huge and complex to manage. Okay, it's better to see number. I finish now with this part. Speaking about, okay, perfect. G7 countries and focusing the attention on a specific type of target that very relevant for us. I discussed before regarding the essential services, the critical infrastructure and the facilities. I grouped these three information and the acronyms that I use is ESIF, ESIF in Italiano, and ESIF in English. Essential service, infrastructure and facilities. I conducted a study on this specific target. Only on G7 countries, okay? G7 countries means USA, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, United Kingdom. I studied 21 years. And I focus, like I said before, the attention on macro target essential service infrastructure facility that I call ESIF or ESIF, as you prefer, in the next hour. In particular, there are 8 target types that has been taken into account respect the global database. And these types of target are business target, airport and aircraft target. I remember I speak regarding essential services, infrastructure, and facility, okay? Food or water supply, journalist and media, means information, maritime, including porting and maritime facility, telecommunication, transportation, other than aviation, because aviation is in the airport and the aircraft. So transportation means bus, metro, underground, okay? Means roads, means high roads, okay? And utilities means water, gas, energy. So these are the category that I selected by the database. And I focus my attention on this 8 target type. Important things that it has in the analysis before, not only the attacks on service and infrastructure has been considered, but even if the attack was to a person of that service, of that infrastructure, okay? The target subtype that are introduced in business are declined, are linked, are in this list, very, very long list. So I will focus the attention on gas, oil, electric, business, infrastructure, restaurant, bar, cafe, bank, commerce, multinational corporation, industrial, factory, okay? Medical, pharmaceutical production, in general, retail, grocery, bakery, means the piccolo commercio, okay? Small shop, hotel, resort, farm, ranch, mining, entertainment in general, stadio, casino, theater, cinema, okay? And other private service companies. So I can arrive to, with my refinement observation, at this maximum level of understanding of the analysis. And for the other, the same. I have a declination of the definition of the target. For example, food and water is separated, food supply, water supply. But what's mean? What's mean big distribution organization for example, food, transportation, restore, supermarket, mini market, big market, okay? We call alimentari, this kind of. Oh, telecommunication means radio, television, telephone, internet infrastructure, multiple telecommunication targets means ponti radio with Wi-Fi distribution and in general electromagnetic distribution of the information. Okay, radio distribution or optical fiber distribution with the organization with the combinational central, permutation central, the server for the distribution of the TCP services. Means World Wide Web, means all activity on social network, means Facebook, WhatsApp, anything you use every day. Okay? Well, in this analysis, the results in 21 years is that USA and UK are at the first in the rank as number of total attack to ESIF, Essential Service, Infrastructure and Facility. The Japan is the last in the rank. This is the first data as a result. This is distribution of the number of the attack for the G7 nation totally. As you say, we have around roughly 40, 50 attacks per years on essential service, infrastructure, and facility. This is the number of the attack year by year for each country. Look there. For example, this means in the 2020, that is the last years that we have available from the database, the global terrorist database, the Great Britain is at the top of the rank with 33 attacks to essential service, infrastructure, and facility. Italy has 2 attacks in 2022. And it's possible in the database to see what kind of attack, who did the attack, the consequence of the attack, as has been organized, the weapon, okay? In general, we have many information from this table. Now we focus attention on USA. This is the specific situation of USA representing the different target in the different alinea. In the first alinea, we have airport. In the second, we have business for USA. Food and water supply for USA, okay? Journalists. And what we see that the total number of the attack for USA is concentrated practically the 80% on the business structure. Business structure, infrastructure. So the question was of the colleague before relating to what kind, the number of the attack and what kind of the attack. So using this kind of table, you can understand, for example, that business in USA is relevant, as a relevant number of attack. Business means all the activity that I discussed before under the word of business that are relevant for the shops, commercial center, professional activity, okay? We can find a comment. Yes, interesting, even the attack to journalists and media. Journalists and media, we have 9 attacks in USA. This is very relevant. The information has been attacked in many situations by terrorism. Not only by terrorism, in some cases even by the state, but anyway, are not in this table that result. In this other, we have a comparison between UK and Italy. Okay, the first one is UK, the second one is Italy. So UK target, Italy target, we have the different target. We have year by year the number of attacks you had and the total at the end. So the final number is 173 for UK and 41 for Italy. But we can see that for Italy, for example, we have 10 attacks to information structure, media, journalist in 20 years. It's not relevant information, this one. I will finish and we have 5 minutes of break. Okay, I see you going down, but the last part of the presentation is relevant, so I want you fresh. Finish very, very sharply. I finish now this number. Okay. In this, I represent target type per target type, then the total number of attack in the G7. So in the Occidental country, the attack are concentrated on the business. This is a clear indication. After we have transportation, and at the third in the rank, we have telecommunication. Telecommunication means telephone, radio, TV, internet, okay? How many are CBRN A, E, and I explosive incendiary for the G7 for this kind of study? As you say, very few. 2 are chemical, has been in USA. 7 are biological, and even these are concentrated in the USA, the attack. No one of this attack on essential service in infrastructure and fatalities. No one in UK, France, Germany, Italy, Canada, Japan. CBR. Instead, we have many explosive and incendiary attacks spread in the different countries. Even this, I think that is very interesting metrics to take into account. I can go in depth, but I stop now here for 5 minutes in order to provide you 5 minutes of oxygen and to have you more reactive. Can we see a quarter past 12? Quarter past 12, okay?
So assuming that the attacks in 2020 UK were attacks on the 5G radio network, mobile phone network. Is that the case?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know, it just seems you've got a bit of a dichotomy between something like the Twin Towers, which counted as a big incident, and somebody blowing up a second one, they're blowing up a set of fire to find the antenna. It just seems a little.
Not comparing.
No, you're not, yeah.
You have all the information in the record, and you understand the relevant. And you manage this information in order to filter.
What I thought was very interesting was that was an actual information that it seems that the fear of 5G tariffs was Britain. Like it wasn't Western Europe, it wasn't English-speaking countries, because it wasn't America, Britain, Australia, and Canada. It was just Britain. So it's kind of. I'm not sure what the point of it making.
It's interesting issue. I don't know if this phenomenon is related to a period within the internet time that I started.
Yeah.
Yes, already. Because clearly we have now the reaction because in the first period we have a very slow application of the technology, so there was no impact immediately on the population. Now, starting from the 2023, we have a law, national law, that say that this is a critical infrastructure application, and it's not possible to stop the application tower and antennas, all the things that is necessary to provide the distribution of signal. And there are some activation of the administrative tribunal to analyze if the law is respected or not respected. We will use the recourse to the tribunal in order to avoid the application of, if it's possible to have another signal from another.
Yeah, we'll be the same in Australia and then in the UK. So I'm originally from the UK and I've lived in Australia for like 20 years. Yeah, it's not related to terrorism directly, but could be very interesting.
It's more a problem of critical infrastructure development.
Yeah.
It's not. We speak terrorism.
I was thinking more, yeah, that's it. It's this is like it's the actual development application. So I'm far other end from your political and what do you call it, policy side. I'm interested in detecting things. Yeah, but this is sort of more of a hobby than your expertise is far greater than this. It's very interesting to me having these things in the media that in the UK, in Australia, we had a growing pushback against windmills. Like, and we've also had this growing pushback against 5G, and you're getting like this communication to the public about the need for critical infrastructure and improvements to critical infrastructure. Because if you kind of say, look, we'll just use.
So you say that the fear of the technology, the impact of the radio signal on the population is stopping or it's not possible to develop the service at the fast.
You're not getting buy-in from the public to a subset of the public, but it's all of the thing. So this is where I was going with it. There was a article probably about 10 or 15 years old, and what it talked about was that the fear of wind turbines is linguistically communicated because it started in, I think it was the UK, and then spread to Australia. But if you went to Italy or
particularly Denmark, nobody cared until at some point it broke through into sources written in Italian. And all, I don't know if this happened in Italy, it certainly did happen in it was the Netherlands and Germany. You started to get pushback against windmills because people were going, but the windmills have got electromagnetic things in them, and I've got electromagnetic sensitivity, and therefore I want to burn down a windmill.
Right. That's the problem. Is not terrorism problem, but is in general the problem of the new technology and the difficulty to evaluate the impact. But I know that in Korea, for example, there are completely realized defined network in the city, very, very deeply applied. Yeah. And all the services are on the G5 carrier for the population, all digital services. Think of litigation, handcuffs, and health services. All things is oriented to the general application and the general and so there are some places in the world where you can find a study, a situation for the health and the impact on the population. And it would be useful to see the health of this kind of population in order to understand the impact of the real impact of this technology. In that place, there was no rebellion, no revolution, was applied silence, people silence, was a different. I think we can observe this kind of results to understand effectively the correct language to be used. Yes, we can say, look there, they were using this kind of service. Nothing is happening. Nothing is they are punched, the jar, this one, is a problem.
The conversation I've had with some people who've been very, we've got actually on 5G things. So, you know, the mobile phone, in 10 years' time, but I've all these cancers. We have had mobile phones for 25 years. I didn't go to university until I was 24. So I went to university in about the year 2000. I didn't get a mobile phone until I went to university. So I have had a mobile phone all day, every day, 25 years. Also got people who enroll like might have been like, it's 1992. Here's a mobile phone because we need to be able to call you. I was in school, after school, 2022. So yeah, that's a conversation I've had, and it's very interesting. Some people like, people like, at the end of 10 years, it very much feeds into that conspiracy because there is no evidence.
The bias discussion.
Yeah. Thank you. This has been absolutely fantastic.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
Le lezioni le facciamo qua, non ce l'hai, no? Ora lo ripeto, facciamo lezioni qua. Facciamo tutto quello che dobbiamo fare, magari le lezioni, ma non pensarsi. Appunto l'attività è comata, diciamo che la figlia è stata all'università.
Yes, yes. It could be an email or a text message. So I get your number and your email. That's a wish. We should not.
I'm sort of ending massive language about CBRN, particularly about detectors and protection, the decontamination.
Yes, you know, when we were talking today, that would be the topic of my. So you like Because I think.
So
No, as I looked at today, as well, the US had much lower numbers than Western Europe. If you see it's 4 times, there would also be a potential issue, with the definition. Because they say they use this definition, but because in the US we use already a different one, that therefore some things are not captured. It's 4 times, it's quite a lot.
Speak about the definition that they are using. It was a sort of evolving definition, starting from 50 years ago. It was completely differently a situation, even in the understanding of that. So if you go in the site of global terrorism database of the internet, you will find the history of the evolution of the definition and the different approach that has been used up to the last one that is roughly 20 years is stable.
And you can still download it?
Yes.
So the old data
yes.
can still.
If you are not if I am speaking on that, but if you find the global terrorism database on the internet, you find a site, a web page, and of the consortium of universities. The name is STAR.
Okay.
And you will find the history of the database that is available in terms of evolution and the code book. I don't know if it's more possible you can even ask the data for the past up to the 2020.
Yes.
But no more the present. So I hope that will be the solution will be changed in the future. But
Very interesting. That's well, what's the differences?
it's very and in the consortium start we find all the publication in the last 20 years on the terrorism and on the evolution of the definitions and the database. So it's very rich bibliography in general for analysis. And after that, there was no information more available. You have a special page for the evaluation of specific period with the grades.
Yes,
and you can say, I want to see this kind of sort of access to the database with the filter in order to see all the information you need on the student.
I'm really enjoying that. That's really,
Interesting for all these courses, even in terms of possible cases of information from discussion papers. Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Può cambiare. Non ha svelato conseguenze.
So you get sheep.
Penso che possiamo riprendere. Prendendo conto che questo mezzo di meno. But I'm an engineer, so for me the number is bread every day. It's a professional defense. Possiamo iniziare? Possiamo partire? So we have the last very fast part. Hai qualche comunicazione da dire? Così ricordiamo su lo massacrato.
L'ho chiamato apposta.
Lo sai che io so.
Ti piace? So to quick communication for those who were not here before the beginning of the lecture. Tomorrow the lecture and the tabletop exercise is confirmed, but here at the university and not at the Italian Navy facility, okay? So same activity, lecture plus tabletop exercise, but we will stay here because we had some organizational problems. So in the end, we decided to move the activity here. So nothing will change. Everything is confirmed in the program. Just the location is the university. We will be room Fleming, the same of the opening. We will write it today at the end of the lecture, because now you have to be focused on the fact that you have to go to the Faculty of Engineering. Because I told the Fleming in this moment, so at least the 3-4 of you will go at the Faculty of Engineering. No, I am joking. By the way, after the lecture, you have to move there. For the lunch, there is a cafeteria with all the services even at the Faculty of Engineering, but the sandwich and the food here is better than the one at the Faculty of Engineering. So my suggestion, my suggestion is to buy the lunch here and then go to the Faculty of Engineering. Otherwise, you can buy the Faculty of Engineering, but it's slightly better.
So we will fast. I conclude my lesson today with the new group of slides. We go very, very fast and sharp. These words are the fundamental for all the courses. This word that you see will be repeated in, I think, almost all the courses that we have in this year. They speak hazard, they speak about threat, risk, attack, accident, incident, agent, vulnerability, exposure, asset, consequence, impact. These are keywords that are used, will be used during the master. In this group slide, we will find all the definition. I will very, very fast, but it could be a reference when you have a doubt. You will find here to reference to the two more important publications that we have in USA and Europe regarding the glossary and used the words used for the CBRN event. Okay. So if we speak of threat, we are speaking about probability that could happen in a special site, an event. Oh, eccoli. an event that is organized and structured and characterized by the or chemical agent or biological agent or radiological. If I speak of threat, I'm not speaking of hazard. It's completely different. We will see that threat is the application of a wanted attacks. Hazard in Italian is pericolo. Hazard is a natural situation or an incident situation, but unwanted. And these are different in the use of term. We use threat, and it's different from hazard, but both are described in terms of the possibility that could happen an event. So we speak about probability of an event. In general, okay. In general, so when we speak of CBRN risk, we speak regarding these 4 different branches of the application. In fact, in the master, you will have special modules regarding the chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear. The explosion is intended as an hybrid application with one of these elements. But as you said before, exists even the simple application of terrorism for explosion to occur without any other kind of chemical or radiological or biological dispersion. When we speak about risk, we provide a measure, this is a fundamental words, a measure of the potentiality of a damage. If I speak of risk, I speak of something that is in the future, is not happen. And if I speak of an event, real event, I speak no more of risk, I speak of impact. Okay? So the definition that we will use in all the master for risk is the measure of the potentiality of a damage. Damage means consequence, means impact, are similar words due to the occurrence of CBRN event that generates a contamination with CBRN agents and substances in a part of the territory. So this is the definition of risk. The damage could be could be the dead victims in terms of people, could be economic loss, could be social effect, could be impossibility to use more an infrastructure and a building, a city, or more relevant for the government, political effect. Public opinion change in the vision of the government, crisis of the government. So if I speak of damage, speak of consequence, speak of impact as similar words in our field. Okay. In some cases, we will see to listen to speak about risk in terms of a product of probability, P, and impact, I. So you say the multiplication, multiply P by I, produce the value of risk. This is very simple, the poor, simple formulas of risk, but in some cases it's useful to apply this kind of formula. So speak about probability of the event, and you imagine the impact that kind of event could produce on the reality. Important to know this information. If I speak of risk, I give information of consequence on the time, number of people per year, for example. I speak of risk if I say every year I will have 3 deaths. It's something in the future that I provide a forecast of the future. If I speak of probability, I speak of number of events for unit of time. If I say 1, 2 times for years, I speak of probability of the event. If I say 1 times every 1,000 years, I speak of probability. So is events on the time. And last, the impact is measure the consequence per event. If I say statistically, if I have an earthquake, I have a given number of dead. Consequence for earthquake event. The same can be applied to CBRN event, obviously. It's important to remember the dimension of the terms because are mathematical information. So I'm an engineer and I appreciate the numbers, but in this course it's important, even for you, if you are not engineer, mathematics, physics, or in general interested in technique, to understand the dimension, the numerical dimension of the words. Okay. Term threat and ours are similar, but are not the same things. What are the difference? Threat is defined in the literature as any circumstance or event with the potential to cause loss of damage an asset. But attention, is typically used to describe the context of a terrorist action or man-made disaster. This means that is intentional. A threat is an intentional action. In Italian's language, we use the term minaccia. Okay, threat is minaccia in Italiano. It's not pericolo. Because our intentional, the intention is the key words of the action. There is someone that is calculating the effect, is deciding to do. Okay, hazard is in general used for natural event, catastrophic event, earthquake, flood, hurricane, okay? Or man-made but accidental event. So in the hazard, there is not intention. There is not a target. If I have an earthquake, there is not a target in earthquake. The earthquake is in the place where we have different faglie in Italian, we say. We use a different part of the earth that is moving one against the other. It's not important what is in the place. That if there is a city, it's a problem, but it's not the problem of the earthquake. It's a problem of earth. So an hazard is not intentional. Clear? So terrorist threats in general, obviously, are completely different from hazard. We don't use the terms hazard if it's applied to terrorism. Terrorism uses the term threat. If we speak about hazard, we have some help of nature. We have historical series, we call in Mathematica, means that you have the registration of the history of the event. And you can provide a forecast, taking into account the history of what will be in the future. You can attempt to have a prediction activity on the future event of a catastrophe. But it's not the same for terrorism, because the terrorist has the threat as the intention of someone. It depends on the mind of a people or group of people. Okay. Other important things, in the hazard, the probability is independent from the asset, the value of the area in which the hazard is applied. I said before, if the hazard is in the desert, there are not effect, no dead, no destruction, no building with problem, no problem. Okay, the hazard not decide where it will be in the function of the asset in general of the exposure. This is the terms that is used in the institutional level at the EU level. The exposure is what are the assets in terms of people, economic value, or in general activity that are in that area. Okay, so an area is under hazard. For example, if I have a factory, a chemical industry, and it's clear that if I have an accident in that area, I could have a problem. But I choose to have a factory in that area. Okay, I can planning different place for the factory, for example, distant from the residential houses of people. It's not the same for the threat, because the terrorists choose the city, choose the church, choose the building. 11 September, choose the Twin Towers. Okay. So you find this different definition and meanings that we have. Okay. When I speak of vulnerability, I'm describing the weakness of people, system, procedure, or structure. There is a vulnerability if something arrive in a specific place, produce a damage. And for example, if there is a human being there, the damage is chemical because he breathes the chemical agent, has problems. Okay, so it's the man that is the human being that is a vulnerability with respect to the chemical agent. If I want to protect, so I want to reduce the vulnerability, I have to protect the human being for the sea attack. This means, for example, a mask. Very simple. If I speak of exposure, the last term that you see there, is the maximum potential amplitude of the target. Okay? So means, if I speak of exposure in an attack, a terrorist attack, I have to ask me, how many people live in that area? 20,000 people, that is the exposure. How many people will be beaten by the chemical agent? I don't know, 1,000 is a part of the exposure, because not all the people are at the same level of vulnerability. For example, for the distance to the event, or for example, for the fact that they have the protection. Okay? In some cases, my colleagues use even the term asset to indicate exposure. Asset means, in Italian we say bene. The asset is the population, is economical value, is the value of historical building, is the traditional of the city. For example, Colosseum for Italy, the heritage of Romans and ancient Romans. These are assets. St. Peter Church is an asset, but an asset could be even the thinking of a public opinion. You understand that it's a completely different issue to evaluate. So a terrorist, one of the tasks of the terrorist could be change opinion of people regarding something. Regarding the government, regarding the president of the council of the minister, the prime minister, regarding the choice to be in war or to be in peace. The word consequence impact represent the concept of damage and are used in a similar way. Consequence, impact, damage. Okay? In some cases, you will find the definition of risk as a function, this is a mathematical correct, function of threat, vulnerability, and exposure. This is the mathematical indication that you will find. So to evaluate the risk is not a simple multiply P for I. Very, very simple formula. the reality is complex, and the evaluation is very, very complex. This is an approach correct. I will leave very sharp on these 3 points. In the slide, you will find the different definitions of risk in USA, United Nations, and European Union. Unfortunately, are not equal. So when you speak about risk, it depends on the state that is applying the definition. The reference for all the technicians when we speak of risk is a standard. The name is ISO, International Standard Organization. The number is 31000 or 31,000. This standard defines risk and is the definition of risk in all the field you can apply the definition. Okay, is a reference. These are the definitions that apply the USA Department of Homeland Security after the 11 September attack in 2001. Risk is the multiplication of threat, vulnerability, and consequence. Look there. Consequence. It's not the vision of European country. And for long years, up to 8 years before COVID, this was a formula applied by the Department of Homeland Security to evaluate risk even for the CBRN attack. This C is consequence, means impact. You will see that in Europe, the C is a E, exposure, is the asset that are exposed to the threat. It's not the impact, because impact means what is beaten by the threat. It's not all the possibility in terms of number of people, area, and so on. We have no time to go in depth, but here we'll find a reference to understand. Even the United Nations speaks of natural events, and they use the term hazard correctly, because it's not more a threat, but is an hazard. And say the formula is risk is a function of hazard, vulnerability, and exposure. Correct. Exposure for United Nations is people, infrastructure, housing, production capability, and other tangible human asset located in hazard-prone areas. Okay? Quindi all things that are in the area of the attack are exposure, are asset. Only a part of this will be the will have a consequence of the attack. Only a part, not all the exposure. If I say earthquake, L'Aquila, the 2009, I know because I were there. Population in L'Aquila was many tens of thousands of people. The dead were 300 people. The exposure was probably 50,000 people. The impact, the consequence was 300 deaths and a certain number of victims in terms of casualties. So the difference of consequence and exposure is at the total area. The consequence is the damage in terms of human life. If you speak of damage for infrastructure, it was more complex the situation. Okay? Okay, Europe speaks, introduce the concept of P, probability, in order to take into account both hazard and threat in a unique formulas. So speak about P as a probability of the event that could be an earthquake or an attack. Okay? After that, consider vulnerability and exposure for the evaluation of risk. If I speak of attack, I speak of a military operation or a terroristic action. There are no discussion if I speak of CBRN attack. if I speak of CBRN event, for Europe could be even an incident, accidental incident. Okay. Okay. Incident or accident, the most relevant, after we go to the last slide. The word accident and incident are both used, but are not the same. If I speak of incident, I speak of general information that could be intentional or non-intentional. An incident could be a terroristic attack or could be a natural event. Is an incident. If I say accident, I speak by an unintentional, unexpected event. So is not an attack. An accident is not an attack. Okay, we find the same things. So an accidental CBR incident is an event caused by the human error or natural or technological reason. Is not wanted, is unwanted, such as spill, accidental release, or leakage. This is an accident. An intentional incident could be a criminal act, terrorist, malicious act, a terrorism act, or a military attack. Okay? In the final part of this third block of slide, we will find all the definitions that you find in two fundamental for you reference. The first is the Lexicon of the Department of Homeland Security, is a publication of 2010 lexicon, and define all the words that have been used in the context of CBRN events. For USA, okay? And okay. So this is the HS risk lexicon. I provide you in the file this document. And the other for you, the equivalent for your European Commission, so European Union, is CBRN glossary that is 2011 production of the document, and is the vocabulary for UA. Are equal? No. For this reason, it's better to understand when you speak, what are you saying? You speak about USA, you speak about you. Okay. Okay. Civil defense, very, very sharp. In many countries, exists only this term to identify someone that help a population, civil defense. The civil defense was applied for the first time after the first worldwide war, sorry, in order to provide protection to civil during the attack, the bombing attack. As you say, for example, in Sweden, civil defense means protection against terrorism. Protection against natural disasters means civil protection for us. But in the terms, it's a civil defense because it is different definition. In general, we call civil defense all the activity that want to produce a protection of our style of life, our community, services, utility, in general, welfare services. Okay. For the first time, we spoke of civil defense in the World War First, and the definition in the support provided by the state to civilians, aiming at reducing the damage deriving from military actions. So, civil defense is against another state that attack my state. What means in simple word? No. After the Second War, civil defense changed the meaning because there was a problem of nuclear weapons. So civil defense was applied to the defense of people in the case of nuclear attacks of another state against me. Okay, we speak about 50 of the last century. In general, so civil defense is an effort to prepare no combats for military attacks. This is the concept in the USA. And after up to dunque, Jimmy Carter, President Jimmy Carter means 1980, there was only civil defense in USA. After 1980, with Jimmy Carter, there was FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, that is the agency to manage even natural catastrophe and calamities. FEMA. After 11 September, FEMA has been incorporated in the Department of Homeland Security. It was a larger, that was focused on the attack on critical infrastructure of the USA and to protect the border for immigration, ICE. Okay, now, unfortunately, we know the effect of these choice. So that's the history of USA. What means civil defense during the war means shelter and siren. Shelter, siren, bombing, go in the shelter. What happens today in the place though where is the war? Civil defense. In the half of the last century, for the first time at the Geneva Convention, the program was spoken about civil protection. Civil protection was intended as the activity against calamities, natural events. In Italy, we have two different organizations. One is civil protection, another is civil defense. Okay? In other parts are the same organization. So depends on the different country and the state organization regarding the defense of people against war, against terrorist attack, against calamities, natural calamities, accidental incident. Okay, this is American history, so not relevant. Ok, va bene. Typically in Italy, only for the Italian here present, when I speak of civil defense, I speak of a competence of Home Office, Ministry of Interior, okay? And fire brigades are the tools, human tools that use it to manage the event in case of civil defense. But if the event is a terroristic event, the organization go up to the president of the council of the minister and is organized with the collaboration of all the unity, means interior home office, fire brigade, civil protection, all together in a single table with the president of the council of the minister in the middle that decide what have to be done. Okay? For the Italians, we can discuss on this issue with many information, but it's not the case in this moment, in this contest. I want to finish with the last information. I have a few minutes, but I promise to be sharp. Ok, ce l'abbiamo fatta. Ok. General organization structure for CBRN civil defense, roles and duties. Be careful because you are in this classroom, but I have different paths in the future. First responders is a path, advisors is another path. In general, in all the world, the organization to manage a crisis in the CBRN, in general, we call this civil defense because CBRN is within the civil defense concept, is structured in this way. A local first responder on the field. Who are these? Typically are fire brigades teams, police forces, medical health service team, military CBRN team in some country, even in our country, local civil protection team, and this is on the field. If the first responder, the first responder are at the low level, the intervention on the field, are the operation, human operation regarding the event, on the field, in the red zone, okay? Okay. At the same time, you have a second level of management of the event that is not more local, but is in the city or district, depends on the organization. And we speak about district local authority. For example, in Italy, could be the mayor of the city, il sindaco, okay? Could be the mayor, could be the president of the province, okay? And in that place, you have a table for the first decision at the local level that have to be decided and communicated to the field and to the first responder. So this is a district emergency committee, and you have there the mayor, the head of the policy force at local level, the head of local fire brigade, the local medical service responsible, quindi the head, the chief for local civil protection of the city. If it's Rome, there will be the Rome civil protection, the head of the Rome civil protection. Ok? Buongiorno. Ma come? Oh, ammazza, oh, espressione italiana, ammazzate, oh, una canzone una volta. Ok, heads of the essential service of the city to decide, for example, regarding gas, water, energy, fuel, and in general, critical infrastructure. We go down at the regional emergency committee, could be even a state, for example, for the USA. The regional committee has the authority of the region that could be the head of the state for the federal organization of the USA. And at that table, that is for the advisors. Okay, the table are for advisors. The field is for the first responders. You have the head of the policies at the regional level, the fire brigade, the medical services, the head of the civil protection for the region or for the states, depending on the organization of the state, if it's a federal or if it's a single nation. Okay, and finally, at the top, you have the national committee. For Italy means the presidents of the council of the minister with the Comitato Interministeriale Resilienza. This is the name, Resiliency Interministerial Committee. For the USA means Trump with his colleagues in the emergency room situation for the DHS organization, Department of Homeland Security, okay? And people are the top of the nation. The head of the police, the head of fire brigade at a national level. So all the tables are connected with the communication, information, and transport, and in general with all kind of information you mean, smartphone, optical fiber, specific systems for data elaboration, okay? So if the first responder are the first in the image, I show you this image 4 hours ago. The yellow one, the advisor around the table are clerk and decide what is better to do in the short, medium, and long term, and what communicate to population. That is a very big problem that you will face in another module of communication. So now I finish showing you the initial image. This is an event. Could be a CBRN, yes. I don't know if it's CBRN. The first intervention is of the CBRN unit first responders. In Italy, fire brigades are organized with the first responders to arrive in the place and decide is CBRN or not. Okay, first responders. This is the equipment typical. There are probably dead victims, and there is a specific procedure to arrive to people, are not the fire brigades. There is an organization with the health services around the red zone that arrive. Someone is transporting people in order to provide the help. The triage is revolted, is in the other sense. I save people that are less impacted by the event before. And at the last action, if I can, I help people that are completely destroyed. Devo chiudere. Quindi ho finito, ma non ve l'ho fatto cenno. So, you see the final slide, because I have to close. The organization is the same, substantially in all the cases. First responder on the field and advisor around the table. Okay, thank you very much. Yes. Sì.
Sono ufficiale di marina, sono
Sì,
un medico.
sì.
Sono uno specialista di medicina emergenza. Per quanto riguarda i dati sanitari, c'è una sezione.
Sul database, dici?
Sì, no, non sul database. Che
Sì, aspetta, vai.
in merito sta il riconoscimento precoce. Per esempio, se compaiono, io penso ai programmi che si usano in tutti i
Io penso che ci siano, ma non li conosco.
Ok.
E bisognerebbe in questo... Tu sei in contatto con la CIT, mai sentita la Commissione Interministeriale Tecnica Difesa Civile del Ministero dell'Interno? CTDC.
Però no.
Ecco, diciamo che attraverso loro probabilmente puoi entrarci in contatto, perché io ci ho lavorato ma ormai 15 anni fa, e quindi non saprei chi ci sta.
Ambito di difesa civile.
Lì, nell'ambito di difesa civile, c'è la sezione che si occupa della parte health, che custodisce una serie di dati e informazioni.
Si chiama precisamente?
Allora, la CTDC, Commissione Interministeriale Tecnica Difesa Civile, CTDC.
Grazie mille. È
Prego.
stato un piacere.
Un piacere, grazie, per piacere.
Marco,
quindi ho capito.
hai tolto già, no?
Sì, ho tolto.
Noi, scusa, dobbiamo...